I'm going to show you how to do a really easy particle dissolve effect that you can use on logos, titles, and even yourself. Let's take a look. The particle dissolve effect has always been a pretty popular effect, but ever since Avengers Endgame came out and the whole Thanos, snappy thing and the everybody dissipate, you know what I'm talking about. Ever since that happened, everybody has been trying to figure out how to make that effect. And there's a lot of tutorials out there, but most of them are in After Effects, or they're using some kind of free graphic that you can get off the internet, or they're using trap code, which I'm not even going to begin to try and explain because I barely understand it myself. So I figured, in the spirit of trying to get more acquainted, more comfortable with Fusion in Davinci Resolve 16, I'd show you guys the kind of the backbone, the bare essentials to get this effect in your videos from scratch. Now, like I said, this is the bare bones, bare minimum. This is just everything that you need to get started doing the particle dissolve effect. And once you get comfortable with that, you can start building on it. You can tweak the particles and you can work in 3D space, and basically sky's the limit. Just use your imagination, get creative, and make something. And with that being said, we've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's jump into Davinci Resolve and start building out this particle dissolve effect. All right, let's do this. We are here in the edit page in Davinci Resolve 16. We're going to be jumping into Fusion in just a bit, but first I want to go over a couple things that you need in order to make this effect work. The first thing that we're going to be looking at is something called a blank plate, which is just some footage of your scene, of the background of your scene, more specifically, without you in it. So if I deactivate video 2, you'll see that I've got this clip of just my office area without me in it. There's no talking or anything. It's just a perfectly still piece of footage. And a couple things that are really important about this: you want everything to be in the exact same position as it is in the main scene. So my chair is in the exact same place, the laptop is in the exact same place, the camera is locked off on a tripod, because any little camera movements will totally throw this entire thing off. The other thing that you need for this effect is your actual scene, and this is the talking bit. This is the intro that you actually saw at the beginning of this video, and you want to make sure, again, that everything is in the same position as it is in your blank plate. So you can't really see it here, but this chair is actually in the same exact position as it was in the blank plate, and that's going to become really important when we start masking things out and adding in our particles and all of that. One last tip: if you're going to be doing any color grading, any color matching, you want to make sure you do that before you start working on this effect, and that way you can make sure that everything is matched up, everything looks good before you start merging things together and playing around in Fusion. Alright, and with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and start building out this effect. The first thing that we want to do is actually copy our main scene. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down Alt, and I'm going to drag that main scene up one track, and now I've got two versions of that scene. And the next thing that I'm going to do is create fusion clips out of both of these. So let's go ahead and right click on that clip. We're going to go up to new fusion clip, and we go to the clip below it, right click, new fusion clip. And let's go ahead and click on the top fusion clip and go to the fusion page. Alright, once the Fusion page is loaded up, the first thing that we're going to do is actually mask ourselves out. So what we're going to do is make sure that none of our nodes are selected. We're going to come up and click on B-spline. We're going to drag this down so we can actually see our whole image. And what we're going to do is just trace around the object that we're dissolving, just like you would in any other mask. Although in special effects, this is called rotoscoping. And normally, if I was doing this for a client or for a big professional video, what I would do is try and make this as tight as possible, as accurate as possible, so that everything is nice and clean. But in this case, I'm not too worried about that. For the sake of this tutorial and for the sake of timing, we're just going to go ahead and do the best we can. And once we've traced around whatever we're dissolving, let's come back down into our nodes, drag that up a little bit, and we're going to connect our B-spline node to our media in. Now you can see we have removed everything but the thing that we're dissolving, and that is good. That's exactly what we want. Now it's time to start adding some particles. Before we do that, let's go ahead and organize this. Line up all tools to grid, arrange tools to grid, put this down here. All right, next thing we're gonna do is add a particle emitter. So go ahead and hit Shift Space, just type in PE, and P emitter is what we're looking for. Go ahead and click on that and hit Add. And then the other thing we're gonna need is a particle render. So let's go ahead and hit Shift Space again, and this time click PR, and we got P render, and that's what we're looking for. Click on that, hit Add. We're working in a 2D space for this tutorial. Like I said, once you get comfortable with this and you want to start playing around with some additional stuff, you can go ahead and start working in 3D. But right now, we're going to change this particle render output mode to 2D. Next, we're going to click on the particle emitter. We're going to come over to our inspector. We're going to make sure that we're in our controls tab. We're going to drag the number all the way up to 100, and that's actually, I don't think that's going to be enough. So let's go ahead and change that to 200. Come down to velocity. We're going to change velocity to 0.1, and that's just to get those particles moving. We're going to bring up the velocity variance a little bit, maybe to 0.134. That'll be good. And what that's going to do is that's going to make it so that these particles, instead of all moving at the same time, they're going to start from over here, and they're basically just going to be moving at different times, which will give that nice effect of the particles floating off of the screen. Next thing we're going to do is change our angle to 180, and that's because by default, these particles are going to flow from left to right, and I actually want them to flow from right to left. So we're going to change that to 180. That'll take care of that. Last thing we're going to do, which makes absolutely no sense right now, but it'll make perfect sense in just a second, we're going to come up to color and hit that drop down box. So we're going to change it to use color from region. Next, let's move over to the Style tab, and we're going to change the style from point to blob. We're going to go down to Size Controls. We're going to drag size all the way up to 0.5. For good measure, we'll bring up that size variance a little bit. And next, we're going to move over to the Region tab. And the Region drop-down box, we're going to change from Sphere to Bitmap. And you'll see that once we did that, we can now connect this particle emitter to something. So let's go ahead and delete the line between media in and media out. Going to go ahead and hook up media into that particle emitter, and we're going to hook up that particle render to media out. Go ahead and click Save and head back over to the edit page. And now if we scroll through, you'll see we've got some particles going on, and that looks okay. The problem is I'm not going anywhere, and we need to fix that. So let's go ahead down to our other Fusion clip, click on that, head back over to the Fusion page. And once again, we're going to be doing some masking. So let's go ahead and make sure that none of our nodes are selected. We're going to click on B-spline, drag this down so we can see the whole image. And let's go ahead and start drawing a kind of a staggered pattern here, so it doesn't look like it's a perfectly straight line. Zoom out a little bit. We're going to make this box as big as possible. We can straighten out the back end of this mask by highlighting these points right here and hitting Shift L. Now you see we've got a more of a boxy thing, and that's exactly what we're going for. Go ahead and zoom back in. Next thing we're going to do is bring up our soft edge. That down to bring our nodes back. Let's go ahead and draw a line from B-spline to media in. Then we're going to come over to our inspector, and we're going to hit invert. Next thing we're going to do is make sure our playhead is all the way back at frame 0, and we're going to choose a starting point. That looks good right about there. We're going to set a keyframe for the center. Let's go ahead and move back to the end of that Fusion clip. And we're going to change our center, move it over until our mask has deleted us. or whatever you happen to be dissolving. That looks good right about there. Go ahead and hit save. Head back to the edit page. And now if we scrub through, you can see now we have particles emitting, and I am starting to disappear from the screen. And that is looking pretty good to me. Last thing I want to do is just fade this particle clip out a little bit at the end. That should be good. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Yeah, that's perfect. All right, let's get some sound design on here and take another look at our final product. I'm going to show you how to do a really easy particle dissolve effect that you can use on logos, titles, and even yourself. Let's take a look. Now, like I said in the beginning of this video, this effect can be used not only on yourself, but also logos, images, and even titles. And speaking of titles, if you want to learn another really cool effect that you can use to animate your titles in Davinci Resolve, check out this video right here. And if you found this useful and you want to learn more about video editing, camera gear, and how to make better videos, make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next video. Go watch it now.